it's Parshas, this week's Parshas Chukas. There's a quite unusual story, even even by the standards of Tanakh. It's kind of unusual. I mean, Vayisu mehor hahor derech Yamsuf Lizboiv es Eretz Edom. So they journeyed from Hor Hahor, and they around Eretz Edom. Vatiksar nefesh ha'om baderech. The spirit of the people grew short on the way. No, Vayidaber ha'om b'Elokim b'Moshe. The people spoke against Kaviyachol the Rebbeinu Shalom and Moshe. Lama helisunu miMitzrayim. Lamus b'Midbar. Why did you bring us up from Mitzrayim to die in the Midbar? Ki ein lechem ve'ein mayim v'nafshenu kotza b'lechem hakloikel. Vayishalach Hashem ba'omes hanechoshim hasrofim. So the HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent fiery serpents. Vayinashchu esa'om. They bit the people. Vayomos am rav mi Yisrael. Vayovoy ha'em el Moshe vayoimru chatonu ki dibarnu b'Hashem uvoch. Vavoch. Yispalel Hashem. V'yosem me'aleinu es hanochosh. Vayispalel Moshe ba'adom. Vayoim Hashem al Moshe. Asei lecha sorof v'sim oisei al neis. Yeah, you put a sorof. Again, it's a nochosh, the nechash and nechoshes, a serpent on a pole. V'hoya kol hanoshuch v'ro oisei v'chai. All those that were bitten will see it and they will live. Vayas Moshe nechash nechoshes v'yisimeu al haneis v'hoya im noshach hanochosh es ish v'hibit el nechash hanechoshes v'choy. I mean, why is this so unusual? Because, I mean, it's true that complaints were quite usual in the Midbar, and unfortunately until today, but the Einish, and especially the way that this Einish was removed, is really beyond. I mean, the putting a Nachash on a pole and having the people look at the Nachash. So the Mishnah, in the end of the third parak in Rosh Hashanah, explains this, and the Mishnah says like this: Misha hoya oiver acharei beis hakneses. Somebody's passing by behind the shul. He lives next to the Beis HaKnesses. V'shama koil shofar. Oy koil Megillah. He heard the sound of the shofar. He heard Kriyas HaMegillah. Im kivein libai yotza. Yeah, so if he had in mind, he had in mind to be yotza. He's yotza. Ve'im loy kivein liboy lo yotza. Afal pi shezeh shama v'zeh shama. It looks like they're both the same. He heard and he heard. But zeh kivein liboy v'zeh loy kivein liboy. He did have kavanah and he didn't have kavanah. And then the Mishnah continues. V'hoyo kashe yorim Moshe yodoy v'gova Yisrael, which is referring to what it says in the end of Parshas B'Shalach when Amalek came, Lihilochem im Yisrael b'refidim. Yo, it's v'hoyo kasha yorim Moshe es yodoi v'gava Yisrael v'chi yodov shel Moshe oisois melchama oishoivrois melchama. Did the hands of Moshe make or break the war? Eloloi malacha. Kol zman shehoyu Yisrael mistakling klape mailo, when they looked upwards, and mishab din libon lavim sheb'shamayim, they subjected their heart to their Father in heaven, hayu misgavrim, then they were victorious. Ve'im lav hayu noiflin. If not, they fell. Then the Mishnah continues and says, Kayoytze b'davar toimer, asei lecha sorof, v'sim oisei al neis, v'hoyo kol hanoshuch v'ro oisei v'chai, v'chi nochosh meimes, oy nochosh mechaye. Does the Nachash kill, or does the Nachash preserve life? Ela b'zman sheYisrael mistakling klape mailo, u'mishabdin libon v'aviyan sheb'shamayim, when they look upwards and they mishabed their heart to aviyan sheb'shamayim, hein misrapim, they're healed. V'im lav hoyu nemoikim, if not, they rotted away. And then the Mishnah concludes with the halach in Hilchos Kiyas Shofar, which we were talking about before. And the Mishnah says, Cheresh, Shoita, v'kotten. Yeah, deaf mute, an imbecile, or a cotton, a child, ain't moitzi as rabbim yidei chayvasa. They can't be moitzi, the rabbim yidei chayvasa of Tkiyas Shofar. Zeh haklal, this is a general rule. Kol she'enei mechuyev b'davar, Einoi moitzi es harabim yedei choivosam. Now, in general, agadatis in Mishnayos is kind of unusual. In the Gemara, it's common, but in Mishnayos, to have an agadata is unusual. In the few places that we do have an agada in the Mishnah, it's connected directly with the din that the Mishnah said. Like, for example, in the first parak in Makis, the Mishnah says, Rabbi Akiva says, that says, Al pishnayim eidim or shloisha eidim yumas hameis. If the edus is miskayim b'shnayim, lama pirek l'cha akosu b'shloisha, Rabbi Akiva says that it's coming to say that the third one also gets the oynish of kasher zomam. Yeah, and then he continues and he says, Vim kain onash hakosuv lenitfal lo'oivrei aveira. If the Torah punished in this way the tag along, somebody that tags along to oivrei aveira, so ke'oivrei aveira, he gets the same oynish as the ones that actually made the edus. So al achas kama v'chama yishalem schar toiv le oisei mitzvah k'oisei mitzvah. Okay, so this is directly connected with the din that it says in the Mishnah, and so in other Mishnayos. But in this case, I mean, what's the connection of this agadata about Yodov Shel Moshe and about the Nachash and Achoshes to the din of the Mishnah? I mean, why did the Mishnah insert this between the din of Hoya Oiver Achoirei Beis HaKnesses and the din of Chera Shoite V'Kotten Ein Moitziin Asarab Midei Choivosam? So the Rambam in Pirush Mishnayos writes, V'hoya kasher yore Moshe Yodoi v'goymer diber bekan. He spoke over here kefi ma she'anachnu tzrichim boy, according to what we need, b'ma she'anachnu b'darkoi, for what we're in the middle of explaining, ukefi kavanas hamasechta. In Rav Kapach's translation, he says, Kol ze borur lefi ma she'tzorich kan be'inyan she'anachnu boy ulefi ma Toras hasefer. So what in the world does this mean? The Rambam is clearly addressing this problem. Why is this here? And he's saying that, yeah, we actually need to discuss this right here and now. So what is this about? So the Chorah, the Pshat is because the mitzvah of Tkiyah Shofar Rosh Hashanah is filled with mystery. In Midrash Chazal, Moshel, on the pasuk of Olo Eloikim Besru'ah Hashem Bekoil Shofar, the Midrashim say that through the Kol Shofar, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kaviyachol ascends, rises from the Kisei Din, and he's Mesiashev al Kisei Rachamim. So there's a concern in a case like this that we will consider Tkiyah Shofar like something magical. It's like pressing buttons and bringing about a certain effect. We would think that the Kol Shofar has an inherent sgula to be mevatel the midas adin and to bring on the midas arachman. But the truth is, obviously, that the Kol Shofar in itself has nothing. As the Midrash says, Tiku b'chodesh Shofar, shapru ma'aseichem. The Midrash dashens Shofar in the sense of shapru ma'aseichem, which means improve, beautify your maisim. Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, im shipartem ma'aseichem, hareini na'aseh lochem kashofar hazeh. Ma shofar zeh, machnis bozu u'moitzi bezu, that the air comes in from one side and goes out in the other. Kachani, oimed mikisei adin v'yoshev al kisei rachamim. V'hoifeich lochem midas adin l'midas rachamim. Emasai b'chodesh hashvi. So it's about shapru ma'aseichem. So the Kol Shofar is meant to awaken in us the rotzen to improve. As the Rishonim say, that the irbuv hasotan that the Gemara talks about really means the irbuv of the Yetzer Hara, confusing our own Yetzer Hara, which hu hasotan, hu Yetzer Hara, hu malach hamoves. So this is what the Mishnah is saying. The Oiver Achorei Beis HaKnesses, it's all dependent on kivein liboy. Afal pi shezeh shoma v'zeh shoma, zeh kivein liboy v'zeh loy kivein liboy. It's only through the kavanas mitzvah that the shofar does its job. And so also, this is what the Mishnah concludes. that a cheres shoyte v'kotten ein moitzi in a cerami they chayvosen. Zeh klal kol shu mechuyev b'davar could be moitzi, ein mechuyev b'davar can't be moitzi. Only the chiyuv gives meaning to the koil shofar. The koil shofar on its own has no meaning at all. If it's not a mitzvah, it has no value. And therefore, between the Reisha and the Sefer, the Mishnah talks about the Yodov Shel Moshe and the Nechash and the because in these two things, there would also be room to think that the hands of Moshe and the Nechash and the did some magical work. Yeah, the Nechash and the healed. The Yodov Shel Moshe brought about the victory. And it's not so. It's all dependent on the Meshabdin Libon Lavim Shabashamayim. That's really what it's about. You know, the Chinuch in Mitzvah Tov Kuf Yud Beis, and that's what the Rambam means. Diber bekan kefi ma she'anachnu tzrichim boy, b'ma she'anachnu b'darkoi. This is something that we need in order to have the right approach to the mitzvah of Tkiyas Shofar. That Tkiyas Shofar is just like the Yod of Shel Moshe, and just like the Nechash and Achoshes. It's all about bringing us to Meshabdin Libon Lavim Shebeshamayim. There's no intrinsic value in the Kol Shofar. The Chinuch in Mitzvah Tov Kuf Yud Beis defines the lav of Choiver Chover. And he writes, what's Choiver Chover? He says, V'zeho inyan sheyoyma odam dvorim. A person says words. V'yoyma lebnei odam, he tells people, she'oisam hadvorim. These words that he's saying, yoyilu o yaziku le'echad mikol inyonim. They help, or they do damage. Le'echad mikol inyonim. V'loshin sifri, echad choiver es hanochosh, ve'echad choiver es ha'akrov, keloymar, sheyoymar aleihem dvorim, kidei shelo yishchehu. That he says some kind of words that brings about that the snake will not bite. Somebody that says words that supposedly remove the pain. Okay, now the Chinuch says, "V'ulai b'ni takshe olai." You might ask on me, b'ni, you know, because he wrote the whole Sefer Chinuch for his son, as you see in the Hagdama. So ulai b'ni takshe olai. You'll ask, "V'hodig asinim b'mesechta Shvuos b'perik Yediyas Atzoma." There's a Gemara in Shvuos Daf Tes Vav Amid Beis, which is actually talking about how they were moisif al ha'ir va'al ha'azorois. But the Gemara over there says, Shir shel pegoim b'kinoros v'nevolim. That they said at that time, the Shir shel pegoim with kinoros and nevolim, with musical instruments. And what is the Shir shel pegoim? Yoshev b'seiser elyon ad ki ato Hashem machsi. This is the shir that protects from pegoim, that protects from mazikim. V'oimer Hashem morabu tzorai ad la Hashem hayeshua upirish pegoim koloimer she'amiras elu hamizmorim toil lishmor min hanezokin v'omru Rabbi Shua ben Levi mesada lahu lahani kroi v'goni. That Rabbi Shua ben Levi used to say this before he went to sleep. He used to say these psukim. So the Chinuch is being bothered. He's saying that his son might be bothered that this sounds like a chover chover. So he says, "Ve'eina dover chalila doime le'inyan chover chover shezocharnu." This is not like a machashiv saying words that fend off the mazikim. Ukvar omru zal, the Gemara over there says, she'osur lehisrapois b'divrei Torah, that you're not allowed to heal yourself with divrei Torah. Aval hiskiru loymar mizmorim elu sheyesh behem dvorim yo'oreru hanefesh hayoidea oisam lachsois b'Hashem ulahosim boy kol niftochoi v'likvaya b'levava yir osoi v'lismoich al chasnoi v'tuvoi umitoich hahisoirerus al zeh yeh nishmar b'lisofik mikol nezek. In other words, it's not that there's some magic to these psukim that they are shomim and amazikim. The idea is that when you say that shir shel pegoim, you bring yourself to a level of amunah and betochen and yira and you rise to a level where you are worthy of being saved. And he says, "V'zeh she'ishivu b'gemara be'inyan zeh," because the Gemara asks, "The heichi ovid Rabbi Yeshua hachi." How did Rabbi Yeshua say these psukim before he went to sleep? V'ha'amar Rabbi Yeshua asa lehisrapos b'divrei Torah. The same Rabbi Yeshua says that you're not allowed to heal. You're not allowed to heal yourself with divrei Torah. V'amru lahagein shani. To protect yourself, it's different. Haiches the chinuch koloimar loy osra Torah sheyoymar adam divrei Torah laorer nafshoy letoiva. The Torah didn't ask us saying divrei Torah to awaken yourself and to bring yourself to a better place. Kadesh yogein olav oisoy haschus l'shoimroi. That's the Gemara's teretz. That why is it not choy vechover? Why is it not misrape b'divrei Torah? Because it's really about connecting to the content of these psukim. So you see, it's not just by Tkiyas Shoifer and by Yodov Shel Moshe and by the Nechash and Nechoshes that there's a concern that we'll see it as a magic, as a trick to activate certain supernatural koiches. But even in saying Tillim, there's this concern. When we say the Shir Shel Pgoim, we have to remember that it doesn't work on its own. There's nothing in these psukim don't have any inherent value and power to be matzil min hanezek. The idea is to internalize the content of these psukim and to be mechazik our emunah and our betachim b'Hashem. Mishabdin libon lavian shebashamayim. Yeah, if a person thinks that it's a sgula, the chinuch is saying he's over on the lav of chayvei chaver, because thinking that words accomplish something in terms of creating nezek or protecting from nezek, that's chayvei chaver. Our parsha begins with Zois Chukas HaTorah. The Parah Aduma is considered a chukah. Rashi says Zois Chukas HaTorah. Lefisha Asoten v'umoy sa'olam moinen es Yisrael tease Yidin loymar ma mitzvah Zois u'ma tam yashbe. What's this mitzvah? What reason is there for it? Lefichach kosav v'chukah. Therefore, the Torah writes chukah gzeira himilfonai. It's a decree. Ve'ein l'chor reshus l'har achreo. So to follow mitzvahs that we don't understand is a challenge, and therefore the Torah needs to emphasize that it's a choik that we won't be able to understand, and we're not expected to understand, and nevertheless we're meant to do it as a gzeira. Truth is that even with regard to chukim, the Rambam writes in the end of Hilchos Meila and in Sefer Hilchos Tmura that it's in as much as a person could give it a reason, he should give it a reason. But in general, but in mitzvahs, the alma, in that are not chukim, we find in Rishonim, many Rishonim that give taimei ha-mitzvahs. But unfortunately today, people are more attracted to the irrational. I would say it's the religious appeal of the irrational. The mitzvahs that we could understand, we're not so attracted to. I mean, we don't sense the aura of kedusha in things that we understand. People feel more Yiddishkeit in Negelwasser than they feel in loisoinu ish es amisoy. And that's really an upside down Yiddishkeit, yeah. I mean, Torah is perceived as a set of sgulas and rituals that are removed from human intelligence, and for that reason, I mean, people today are attracted to all kinds of sgulas, shoynois u'mashunois, that have no meaning. The less meaning, the more it excites people. But it's not so. The Gemara says, "Bekama makomis." The Gemara says, "Lama likro svarahi." Svara is dairaisa. I mean, the Ibn Ezra in his Akdamat Chumash says that the seichel is the malach bein ha'elokim v'adam. The seichel is the messenger of the Rebbeinu Shalom that brings messages to the person. So how did it happen that everything turned upside down? I mean, it could be that since the Enlightenment, I mean, logic is perceived as a competition with religion. And therefore, those that wanted to stay faithful to religion threw away the seichel. But it's taka true as far as religion. But Torah is not a religion. Torah is a Torah Chaim that human intelligence is part and parcel of. Yeah, during the Bayesheni, after the victory of the Chashmonoim on the Yevonim and the Misyavnim, that's when the Tzedaikim, the movement of Tzedaikim became strong. Actually, the descendants of the Chashmonoim became Tzedaikim. It's you're talking that the fundamentalism of the Tzedaikim, I mean, not to use svara, to deny logic and to learn psukim as is, kipshutoy, and not to be mefarish, that was a reaction to Chochmas Yovel. But the Chachmei Yisrael ha'amitiyim, they knew how to use svara in the interpretation of Torah. So only this way can a Ben Torah really integrate Torah with life. I mean, ki ba'or ponecha nasata lonu Torahs chayim. Yeah, it's not the kol shofar, it's not the yod of Shel Moshe, it's not the nachash and achoshes. All these things are just in order to bring us to the level of Meshabdin Libon Lavi and Sheba Shomayim. But we have to remember that what's the nekuda? The nekuda is lezakos es Yisrael, like it says in Svarim, to purify a person. It's not about activating all kind of magical powers, and it's not about meaningless rituals. It's really about internalizing the ideas and becoming better people. Okay, Rabbi Sai, I want to wish you a good Shabbos.